So many times we live as though our journey depends on us. We plan, we strategize, we struggle, and we worry, believing that the answers to our problems are hidden somewhere out of reach, waiting for us to somehow invent the solution. But the truth is, the way you need has already been created. Before you woke up this morning, before you faced the obstacle that stands in your life right now, before the heartbreak, before the rejection, before the closed doors, God had already set a path in motion. You're not stepping into chaos, you're stepping into preparation. The path was there long before you saw the problem. This is what makes walking with God so powerful. He doesn't start building when the storm begins. He doesn't start making a way when the trouble shows up. The way was already spoken into existence before you even got to this chapter of your life. You may be crying. You may be doubting. You may be worrying about how to make it through, but you are not waiting for God to figure it out. He already did. The path is not being created in real time. It's being revealed in divine time. And the greatest struggle many of us face is that we confuse visibility with existence. Just because you can't see the way doesn't mean the way is not there. Think about the children of Israel standing before the Red Sea. To their eyes, there was no way forward. They saw walls of water in front, an army behind, and fear gripping every side. Yet God said, "Stand still and see the salvation of the Lord." The path wasn't made in that moment. It was revealed in that moment. God had already appointed the sea to obey him, already destined the water to part when the time was right. That miracle wasn't improvised. It was written into their destiny before Pharaoh ever sent his army. The way already existed. And that's where some of us are right now. You are standing in front of something that looks impossible. You are staring at a mountain of debt, a sea of confusion, or a wilderness of loneliness, and all you can see is what's blocking you. But while you are looking at what is blocking you, God has already established what will deliver you. What you call impossible, he calls prepared. What you call hopeless, he calls finished. The way is there, but your fear is louder than your faith. We lose sight of this truth because we measure life by what our natural eyes can perceive. We live by reports, by circumstances, by numbers, by statistics. But God does not need your senses to confirm what he has already done. The path exists in the unseen before it manifests in the seen. That is why the scripture says, we walk by faith, not by sight. If you only trust what you can see, you will never move into what God has prepared. Faith is the bridge between what is invisible and what will soon be undeniable. Sometimes the hardest part of believing that the way exists is the silence of God. When heaven seems quiet, we assume nothing is happening. We think delay means absence. We think silence means inactivity. But silence is often God's greatest evidence of preparation. If he is not speaking, it's because he has already spoken. If he is not explaining, it's because he has already decided. You don't need a new word when you are walking on the old word that's already carrying you. The silence of God doesn't mean the absence of a way. It means the way has already been set and you are being positioned to step into it. The enemy thrives on convincing you that there is no way. He whispers lies that you are stuck, that you are defeated, that there is no way forward from the pit you're in. He'll try to magnify your failures, your losses, and your fears until you can't even imagine victory. But what the enemy doesn't want you to know is that the path is not about you making it. It's about God having already made it. When you shift your perspective from striving to trusting, from fighting to following, you begin to recognize that the way is not something you create, it is something you discover. That's why you can't afford to quit now. That's why you can't give in to despair. That's why you can't let the weight of your situation convince you that it's over. Because what looks like the end is only a closed chapter, not a closed book. The next chapter has already been written. God's hand has already sketched out the details, and your footsteps are being ordered even in your confusion. You may be asking, where do I go? How do I move? What's the next step? And the answer is, trust that the step has already been prepared. Your responsibility is not to manufacture the way, but to stay sensitive to the one who reveals it. Sometimes that means slowing down long enough to listen. Sometimes it means surrendering your pride and admitting you don't know. Sometimes it means walking into uncertainty with trembling knees but steady faith. The path doesn't need your perfection. It needs your obedience. You don't have to be flawless to walk in it. You just have to be willing. The way already exists. It existed before you were born, before you failed, before you stumbled, before you doubted. It was written into your destiny by the one who authored your life. He is Alpha and Omega, the beginning and the end. If he is the end, then the way to get to that end has already been established. You're not wandering, you're being led. You're not lost, you're being guided. The way you need is not being figured out as you go. It's already been prepared, waiting for you to trust enough to walk into it. There comes a point in every believer's life when the road ahead feels uncertain. You are standing at a crossroads, and all you see are shadows. You try to make sense of what's happening, but the answers don't come. The plans you laid out are interrupted. The doors you thought would open stay closed, and the voices around you only add to the noise in your mind. It is in this place, this uncomfortable place of not knowing, that God calls you to trust him the most. Trust is not tested when everything is clear. Trust is proven in the fog, in the confusion, in the silence. When you cannot trace God's hand, you must trust his heart. There are times when his movements are hidden, his timing seems delayed, and his methods are beyond human understanding. But just because you don't see the plan doesn't mean there isn't one. The unknown is not unknown to him. What looks blurry to you is crystal clear to him. He has already measured the details of your journey, calculated every step, and appointed every season. You may be walking into uncertainty, but God is not uncertain. You may feel lost, but he has already mapped out the course. This is the struggle of faith, learning to let go of control. Human nature craves certainty. We want to know what's next, where we're going, how long it will take, and what the outcome will be. But God often leads us by steps, not by miles. He reveals enough light for the next step, not the entire journey. He gives you today's instructions without showing you tomorrow's outcome. And that is not to frustrate you, but to train your trust. If he revealed the whole plan at once, you would not need faith. Faith is what keeps you moving when you don't understand, when you can't see, when you don't know how it will work out. Think of Abraham when God told him, "Go to a land I will show you." There was no map, no coordinates, no timeline, only a word. Abraham had to leave everything familiar and step into the unknown. What carried him was not knowledge of the destination, but trust in the one who gave the direction. That is the essence of faith, walking without proof, trusting without evidence, moving without clarity, simply because you know the one who called you is faithful. The unknown has a way of revealing what we really believe. It strips away the illusion of control and forces us to lean on God in ways we never have before. It is easy to declare trust when life is predictable. It is easy to sing about faith when the bills are paid, the job is secure, the relationships are steady. But when the bottom falls out, when the doctor gives a bad report, when the people you depended on walk away, when the answers are nowhere in sight, that's when true trust is born. Trust is not proven in stability, it is proven in storms. This is where many people stumble. When things don't make sense, we try to fix it ourselves. We rush, we panic, we manipulate, we force doors open. We hold on to people who are leaving. We cling to plans that are crumbling. And in doing so, we often prolong the pain because God never asked us to be the architect of our own destiny. He asked us to be followers of His voice. The unknown is not meant to intimidate you. It is meant to push you deeper into reliance on Him. If you could figure everything out on your own, you wouldn't need His guidance. The unknown is His invitation to trust. Trusting God's guidance doesn't mean you will always feel confident. It doesn't mean you won't wrestle with doubt or feel moments of fear. Trust is not the absence of fear, it is the decision to obey in spite of it. It is the choice to move forward even when your knees are shaking. It is saying, God, I don't know how this will work, but I refuse to stay stuck here. I will walk in the direction you lead, even if I can't see the finish line. That kind of trust pleases God. That kind of trust attracts His favor. There's a reason the Bible says, your word is a lamp to my feet and a light to my path. Notice it doesn't say a floodlight that illuminates the whole highway. It says a lamp to your feet, just enough to see the next step. That's how God guides us. He doesn't overwhelm us with the whole picture. He gives us enough light to take the next move, and then once we take it, He gives more light. Step by step, trust by trust, obedience by obedience. We move through the unknown into the promises He has prepared. Sometimes, the unknown is not meant to destroy you, but to develop you. It teaches patience when you want to rush. It teaches dependence when you want control. It teaches humility when pride tempts you to think you can do it all alone. Every delay, every question mark, every moment of confusion is shaping your character to handle the blessing that's waiting ahead. The unknown is God's classroom, and trust is the lesson. If you fail the test, He will give it again, not to punish you, but to grow you until your faith matures. And here is the beauty of trusting God in the unknown. When you look back, you will see that He never left you. In the moment, it feels like you're walking blind. But later, you realize every step was ordered. Every detail was connected. Every detour had a purpose. The unknown that terrified you becomes the testimony that strengthens you. The season that confused you becomes the story that inspires others. What you thought was uncertainty was really divine strategy in disguise. You may not see it now, but the unknown is not your enemy. It is the place where God's guidance shines brightest. It is the arena where trust becomes more than a word. It becomes a lifestyle. The unknown is not a punishment, it is a pathway. And when you dare to keep walking with Him in the dark, you will discover that He was leading you all along one of the greatest battles in the walk of faith, is learning how to handle delay. Delay has a way of making us question whether God really heard our prayers. Delay whispers to us that maybe we're forgotten, maybe we're overlooked, Maybe we've been disqualified from the blessings we once believed in. But delay is not denial. Just because the promise has not yet manifested does not mean the promise has been canceled. God's timing is not tied to our calendar. He does not rush to meet our expectations, nor does he bow to our deadlines. He is not a servant to our schedule. He is the master of time. When God delays, it is not to punish you, but to prepare you. He is aligning pieces you cannot see, arranging people you do not know, and protecting you from dangers you cannot anticipate. What looks like a setback is often a setup for something greater than you imagine. Fear often shows up in those moments of delay. When the wait feels too long, fear tries to take the driver's seat. Fear begins to paint pictures in your mind of what could go wrong, what may never happen, and how you will fail if you take another step. Fear paralyzes. Fear blinds. Fear magnifies the obstacle until the way forward looks impossible. But fear is a liar. It is the language of the enemy meant to drown out the whisper of God's promise. Faith says, God will make a way. Fear says, you will never make it. Faith says, God's word is true. Fear says, it will end in disappointment. Every time you listen to fear, you silence faith. Every time you magnify the obstacle, you minimize God. Obstacles are real, but they are not final. The mountain standing in your way is not greater than the one who moves mountains. The closed doors in your life are not stronger than the one who opens doors no man can shut. The enemies that rise against you are not more powerful than the God who raises up a standard against them. Obstacles are not signals to quit. They are opportunities to trust. If the path was always clear, if the road was always easy, if there were never walls to climb or rivers to cross, you would never discover the depth of God's power working in your life. The obstacle is not meant to destroy you. It is meant to reveal what God can do through you. Delay fear, and obstacles often come in the same season. You're waiting, you're afraid, and you're blocked all at once. That's when the enemy whispers the loudest, give up. It's not worth it. You'll never get there. But that is the very moment you must remember that God specializes in making a way where there seems to be no way. The Israelites faced the Red Sea ahead and Pharaoh's army behind. It was delay, fear, and obstacle all wrapped into one moment. Yet God parted the waters. David faced Goliath, a giant mocking his people and intimidating an entire army. It was fear and obstacle staring him down. Yet God gave him victory with a stone and a sling. Daniel was thrown into a den of lions. That was more than an obstacle. It was a death sentence. Yet God shut the mouths of the lions. What these stories remind us is that God never promised a life without obstacles, but he promised victory over them. He never promised there would be no delays, but he promised the wait would not be wasted. He never promised you would never feel fear, but he promised his perfect love would cast out fear. Everything standing against you is smaller than the God standing for you. Everything resisting you is weaker than the spirit inside of you. The obstacle may be big, but your God is bigger. Delay teaches you patience. Fear teaches you courage. Obstacles teach you perseverance. These are not random hardships. They are training grounds for destiny. The delay forces you to trust God's timing instead of your own. Fear forces you to lean on God's strength instead of your weakness. Obstacles force you to push past limits you never thought you could break. Without them, you would not develop the faith required to sustain the blessing when it comes. God is not just interested in bringing you to the promise. He is shaping you to carry it. Sometimes the hardest obstacle to overcome is not outside of you, but inside of you. It's the doubts you carry, the lies you believe, the insecurities you feed. The battlefield of faith is often in the mind. You can have an open door in front of you, but if fear controls your thoughts, you will never walk through it. You can have resources available to you, but if delay convinces you that it's too late, you will never take hold of them. You can have opportunities waiting, but if the obstacle looks bigger in your imagination than in reality, you will talk yourself out of the very breakthrough God placed in your path. This is why renewing your mind is so important. You cannot overcome external obstacles if you keep bowing to internal ones. You cannot fight giants in the world if you are already defeated by the giants in your head. God has given you authority to silence the voice of fear, to speak against delay with patience, and to face obstacles with faith. You are not powerless, you are equipped. You are not abandoned, you are guided. Every battle you face has already been factored into your victory. Delay is a stage, not a sentence. Fear is a test, not a truth. Obstacles are stepping stones, not stop signs. What feels like resistance is really redirection. What feels like opposition is really opportunity. Every time you choose faith over fear, patience over panic, perseverance over quitting, you are proving to yourself and to the enemy that you trust the God who holds your future. And even in moments when you stumble, when fear overwhelms you, when the obstacle seems too great, remember that God's grace is greater. You don't have to be perfect to overcome. You just have to be willing to keep moving. You don't have to see the end to keep walking. You don't have to have all the answers to trust the one who does. Delay cannot stop his purpose. Fear cannot silence his promise. Obstacles cannot block his plan. There comes a point when faith must become action. It is not enough to simply know that the way already exists, or even to believe in your heart that God has gone before you. At some point, you have to take the step. You have to walk into what he has already prepared. Too many people live their lives at the edge of destiny, standing at the border of the promised land, but never entering in. They pray, they dream, they hope, but they hesitate when it's time to move. Why? Because stepping into a prepared path requires boldness, and boldness requires trust. God has not called you to live timid, afraid, or hesitant. He has not prepared a path for you just so you can stand still staring at it. The path is there to be walked. But walking boldly doesn't mean you will always feel fearless. Boldness is not the absence of fear. It is the decision to move forward in spite of fear. The enemy loves to paralyze believers at the threshold of opportunity. He magnifies the what-ifs. What if you fail? What if people laugh? What if the door slams shut? What if you're not enough? Those questions are designed to keep you on the sidelines of your own purpose. Boldness looks fear in the face and says, even if I don't have all the answers, I will still step forward because I know God has already gone before me. The path God prepares is not just about direction, it's about destiny. When you walk in obedience, you are not simply making moves, you are aligning yourself with divine timing. Boldness is the bridge that takes you from knowing the promise to experiencing the promise. Think about Joshua leading the Israelites after Moses. They had wandered in the wilderness for 40 years, circling, waiting, hoping, but the time came to cross the Jordan River and enter the promised land. God told Joshua, be strong and courageous. Notice he didn't say, be perfect. He didn't say, have every detail figured out. He said, Be strong and courageous. That was the requirement to step into the inheritance that was already theirs. Some of you are circling the same mountain because you refuse to walk into the unknown with boldness. You keep waiting for absolute certainty. But faith does not come with guarantees you can see. Faith gives you a promise, and boldness is what carries you into it. You will never see the waters part until you step your feet into the river. You will never see the walls of Jericho fall until you march around them in obedience. The miracle is not waiting on God. The miracle is waiting on your boldness to act on what He has already said. Boldness also requires obedience. It's not about doing what feels comfortable. It's about doing what He commands. Sometimes the path God has prepared doesn't look logical. It doesn't make sense to the natural mind. He may tell you to leave a place that feels secure, to let go of people you thought would always be with you, to step into opportunities you feel unqualified for. Obedience doesn't always align with comfort, but it always aligns with destiny. Walking boldly means you trust God's wisdom over your own understanding. You trust that if He prepared the path, then He knows what's best for you, even if it doesn't look best right now. When you walk timidly, you miss moments. There are windows of opportunity that God opens, and if you hesitate too long, the season shifts. That's why boldness matters. Boldness says, I may not feel ready, but if God says go, I will go. Boldness doesn't procrastinate when destiny calls. Boldness understands that the way is already prepared, but it requires a willing heart and willing feet to walk it out. The enemy wants you to believe you're unworthy to walk the path. He'll remind you of your failures, your flaws, your past mistakes. But boldness is not about worthiness. It's about identity. You are a child of God, chosen, redeemed, and equipped. The path is not prepared because of your perfection. It's prepared because of His purpose. When you walk boldly, you are not walking in your own strength. You are walking in His authority. That's why the scripture declares, the righteous are bold as a lion. A lion doesn't beg for permission to roar. A lion doesn't shrink back in fear of opposition. A lion moves with authority because it knows who it is. That's the kind of boldness God is calling you to walk in. Walking boldly also means refusing to be intimidated by obstacles along the way. Just because the path is prepared doesn't mean it will be easy. Boldness is what keeps you moving when you encounter resistance. Boldness says, I will not let fear dictate my steps. I will not let failure define my future. I will not let setbacks stop my progress. Boldness refuses to negotiate with doubt. It confronts obstacles with the confidence that God has already factored them into the victory. And here's the truth. Boldness activates what hesitation delays. Some of the blessings you've been praying for are not waiting on God. They're waiting on your courage to walk into them. Boldness opens doors that fear leaves shut. Boldness takes possession of promises that timidity leaves untouched. The prepared path is not just about existence. It's about experience. You can know it's there all day long, but until you walk boldly, you will never taste the fruit of it. Walking boldly in God's prepared path transforms the way you live. You stop settling for survival and start stepping into abundance. You stop existing in the shadows of doubt and start moving in the light of destiny. You stop apologizing for who God called you to be and start embracing it with confidence. Boldness doesn't mean arrogance. It means assurance. Assurance that the one who prepared the path will sustain you on it. Assurance that every step you take is ordered. assurance that even if you stumble, His hand will lift you back up. When you finally decide to walk boldly, you discover that the path is not fragile. It is firm. It is not unstable. It is established. You realize that every step is guided, every detail is covered, every need is supplied. Walking boldly is not just about moving forward. It's about stepping into alignment with the finished work of God. You are not creating the road. You are uncovering it. You are not forcing the door. You are walking through the one He already unlocked. The moment you shift from hesitation to boldness, you shift from wandering to walking, from questioning to claiming, from fear to fulfillment,